So you have a tender rate and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big on the trace and some super glamping. One ideas, deep news and reviews, a podcast the first rate and here just for you. You don't have to think about it, join us and be about it. Something interesting we want to hear about it, come on let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints Podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure. The industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MYMEDIC. Sponsored by TEMBO TUSK. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DUMMIES Collective, mission built and made for mobility. Sponsored by BrewTrek. Sponsored by Hard Impact Designs.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Last time I talked to you, you were telling me that IRONHORSE Overland was having an issue in Guatemala on the border or something like that, getting in.
Yeah, so IRONHORSE went down. They drove the peninsula, or not the peninsula. They drove the mainland Mexico down through Sonora. I think they entered from Sonora and went down south. They made a beeline to go through Mexico very quickly and transiting down there. I think they're traveling with 3 trucks, and one of the participants, one of the vehicles is on some sort of time frame, I think. So they were trying to get down as quickly as possible. In any case, the story that I heard was that they, not them, but one of the other vehicle they were traveling with did not have the correct paperwork to get into Guatemala. For those of you that have not traveled to Central America, it is of the utmost importance to have every single thing, all T's crossed and all I's dotted. And I believe what happened was they had a vehicle that was bank owned, that was not, they didn't own outright, and they did not have the proper documentation showing that they own the vehicle or in this case would be allowed to drive it, et cetera, et cetera. So Guatemala refused entry, and that effectively ended their Pan American Highway Central American trip. So there was no way to, I think IRONHORSE was fine, but to split up the group. So they elected to go back into mainland Mexico, and then subsequently have made their way to Belize, where I am. I'm back at this past weekend. I went to the Baja, the Escapar a la Baja van life and Overland event was this past weekend, just outside of La Paz, which is, by the way, is where the ferry is to go from Baja to the mainland. And I've got to have at least 20 friends right now that are in the mainland that have crossed. In fact, a couple guys just crossed yesterday, took the ferry. So there's a fair amount of overland traffic going down the Pan American right now. But keeping in mind, particularly Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, those countries can be difficult to navigate border crossings. It is a game of patience.
Well, I'm looking forward to, for the listeners, you can look forward to also, we're going to be interviewing IRONHORSE Overland very soon, and they'll be on the podcast, and we'll definitely talk about that.
Right. And they probably will have obviously more details than I have as to what occurred there.
I want to stick to border. I want to stick to South America. I don't know if you've been keeping up with the news, but the biggest...
Fortunately, yes.
Well, the big news that's out there is obviously the border. And my question is for travelers, nomads, overlanders who are taking the trek through Mexico, through South America. Does this interfere with your travel in any kind of way? Are you having any interaction with these people who are migrating north? Are law enforcement doing anything different because of this or anything?
So right now, there's a couple things going on for those of you that are out there that are doing a Pan American trip. One is the Darien Gap thing has gotten significantly worse, meaning that for a couple of reasons, but getting around it has become cost prohibitive, and it has become an exercise in patience once again. I am mostly where I'm stationed here. I've probably run into this season because I've been down here in Mexico now for 3 months, and I have run into, I don't know, 20 or 30 different trucks that are navigating the Pan American, most of which are coming from north to south. And the vast majority of them, currently their plan is to explore Central America separately from South America. So many of them, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them have plans to circle back into Texas and to ship from Texas to Colombia. So that's one issue going on. You have I don't want to call it a civil war, but the status in Ecuador, which had been extremely stable for many, many years. I've been to Ecuador, is not very good. So travel in Ecuador is a challenge, as is the Colombia. And Colombia and Ecuador share a border, so that's causing issues. We also, obviously, Venezuela is a no-go for most of us. So there's some disturbance. There's a election situation going on in, I think it's Bolivia is a problem. So there's some South American countries that are being affected by this. And then, as I think Iron Horse Overland is going to be able to tell you guys better in their podcast, the southern Mexico border is interesting because, and I've heard this from 3 different people, that the citizens of Mexico are largely taking it into their own hands a little bit to police the southern border of Mexico to try to cut off some of the illegal immigration / drug trafficking / other problems. So they are stopping trucks and vehicles, and you could wait in line. I think even Iron Horse, I want to say, was stopped for several hours trying to transit through the very southern tip of Mexico into Guatemala. And that's largely being caused by the problem at the American border because there's no, we don't need to get even political here, because basically at the end of the day, it's a disaster at the American border. All those people are transiting Mexico, and Mexico has been hesitant, let's just say, of stopping the transit, but the people are getting tired of it, the citizens. So they're taking it into their own hands. And that's been causing some transit issues as well. As, by the way, I mentioned the American border. I'm aware of 3 different border crossings. There might even be 4 that are shut down. In fact, one of them I went to get my tourist immigration card is now closed because they're pulling resources and people off of those borders, the American side, and shutting them down to reposition them where there's such an illegal immigration problem going on. So it's a mess. That's the best way I can describe this. It's a mess.
So something that you said really seared through me was when you said, I hate to get political. And the sad thing is, this shouldn't be political.
That's right.
Things that are not political are made political by politics.
Yep.
Because
let's face it, a country is defined by a border. So that's not political at all. So without the availability or without a border, by definition, you don't have a country.
Bruh, we on the same page. And what I was addressing is I shouldn't feel like I have to hesitate or take the temperature of the room to make the statement that you just made. That should just be like, how do you disagree with that?
And generally, I mean, down here, the Mexican people I've found also agree with that. And that's one of the reasons why they've taken it in their own hands and trying to protect their southern border, because all of these people that are transiting into the United States are crossing through their country and causing an immense amount of issues here in Mexico as well. So not only is it a problem at their northern border, it's a problem at the southern border. And for Americans out there, you have to realize this is not a U.S.-Mexican problem. This problem is coming from, countries to the south, and in many cases, not even on this continent. They're coming from overseas. There's people coming in from Eastern Europe. There's people coming in from Ukraine. There's people coming in from the Middle East, China, all sorts of places, Afghanistan. So this is not a U.S.-Mexico problem. It is our problem in a sense that they are transiting. In most cases, they're transiting through these two countries. And they're usually and by the way, that's the other problem with that. Just to go back on what I was saying about the Pan American Highway, the Darien Gap, one of the problems that's going on right now is I just read an article that more than 1 million people transited the Darien Gap in the last 12 months. The Darien Gap is one of those things that we used to talk about where 10 people made it through, and in the history of the world, 12 vehicles have made it through, right? 1 million people this year.
So there's probably like serious trails now.
There are. I mean, there are, and what I'm hearing is that the problem with that, of course, is that you're talking about one of the harshest places on earth. So, I mean, if you don't walk on that trail for about probably 6 days, it grows back in. I mean, that's how dense the struggle is. So there are serious trails. There are camps. There's actually a map. I don't have the resource in front of me to tell you where that was. I looked at a map, and there's a map that shows where all the camps now are, because it's essentially refugee camps inside the Darien Gap, and there's camp. I forget. I want to say it's like 1 through 6, and they transited through. And by the way, all of that, the navigation is being facilitated by drug cartels.
Mm-hmm.
So they are in the business of smuggling people across.
So that's something that bothers me too. When I hear news now, you can't trust the news really. So what I do is I use the news to come up with the topics that I'm going to research.
Right. Yeah.
And
even, by the way, even research has become difficult.
Yes. And in this instance, we're talking about all of these people who are coming that are dangerous and criminals, right? That's a major issue in itself.
Yeah.
But then I read about the news about this. It's this astronomical amount of people who are crossing the border who are either terrorists or on watch lists and Interpol. And I was like, yeah, this is one side or the other just making something up, right? Well, no.
Sure.
You can go to government websites and see that this is actually true.
Yeah.
So we romanticize 9/11 so much. We love the fire department. We love the police. We love all the people that sacrificed. Never again. But we're letting them walk across the border.
Right. Well, and Phil, let's be honest here. I mean, I guess we've gone this way on our podcast now. We're just going to say what we think, but let's look at what's going on. I kind of sit down here in Mexico and people are asking me, how long are you going to stay down here? And my answer right now is, I don't, maybe forever. You're looking at this year. I mean, you're looking at a situation, Texas, let's take Texas as an example. Texas used to be an independent country, right? Originally. I mean, they're in a position right now that they're essentially defying the federal government. So in effect, Texas is like in a position where it's almost positioning itself to secede from America. And then they've got about, 30 states that have signed on to that want to support Texas over the federal government. So this is astronomically weird, right? This is a weird situation about what's going on. And I'm not even judging on who's right and who's wrong in the whole thing, but it's a mess. So I don't know what the solution is, but I guess in my world, it definitely affects travel, and that's kind of what I'm looking at.
And it affects in another way. You don't have to necessarily be in South America. Our reputation around the world has really gotten kind of awful. Yep. So we're not looked at the same way we're looked at. We're shunned where it used to be welcome. Even if they really didn't like you, they acted like they like you. Now they show disdain towards you.
Yeah, and part of the problem is like, our dollar is worth a lot less. I can tell you that we're feeling those effects right down here. It's the most expensive I've seen down here where I am in many, many, many years. Our dollar is where 2 years ago it was about $1 to 26 pesos. Now we're at like 16 to $1. So that's a significant difference. And by the way, the prices of everything are the same or slightly higher. So we're just getting hammered. Price of fuel down here right now I'm paying California prices for diesel down here. It's really way worse than it is in the States. Oh yeah. So, some of that is being affected by, quote, the global economy, right? And, you don't realize that a war, as an example, that's going on in Ukraine is going to affect the global market that way, but it is. And now you've got a situation where you've got, Israel and Hamas, and then you've got the rest of the Middle East are largely getting involved in that now. I mean, I can't name a country over there that isn't really involved.
Well, for about a year and a half now, I've been pretty much talking to anybody who will listen that's a friend of mine and saying everything that's going on appears like we are stair-stepping our way toward war.
Mm-hmm.
Not these little things that a real full-blown war. I'm going to maybe sound like a conspiracist here, but I think that, first of all, I think that politics and government is just all theater to make us feel like we're participants and what's going to be done is done.
Mm-hmm.
And we're worried about these immigrants because of jobs and stuff like that. That's not why they're letting them in. I believe they're letting them in because they need draftees for what's coming.
Very well. That's certainly been done before in past history. Many times.
Almost every time. Throughout history.
Yeah.
You can go back to the Romans and they'd conquer and then offer those people you can join and be part of our war machine.
That's right.
Nothing's new.
No.
So that's what I have in the back of my mind. I maybe I need to stop because at least talking about it on here. But yeah.
This is what we do on the podcast. We talk about things.
Well, bro, I'm gonna talk about it then. So
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's like, I have an interesting situation down here where, like, I can interact with people that are not from the States quite often. Most of the people that I'm hanging out with are from Canada. I'm running into people from Germany and Switzerland and France and, and obviously a ton of Mexican nationals down here and people that are actually on the ground transiting through many of these places that we're talking about. and they're seeing it with their own eyes. So you said you don't trust the news. I mean, nor do I, but I do trust the people that are seeing it, in real reality. And
bro, you've traveled enough personally to have experienced seeing one thing in the news, and you're there, and it's like, that's not true.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's like where I'm in now. If you listen to the news, you'd assume I'm getting my head chopped off down here right now. So, I mean, that's just simply not the case. It's not the way it is. But it's going to be my fear. And this is what I would tell you my fear is for 2024 here, is that the United States is in an election cycle. And from February, from now until November, as you know, probably back in the States, you're going to get inundated nonstop with propaganda from all sides in an election cycle. And I can tell you from sitting outside of the States, the people down here are shaking their head, not understanding our system at all. Can't figure out why the candidates that are potential candidates or even candidates can't figure out how we pick our people, because it would appear that we just roll dice and then pick the worst people that we could find. So, I mean, this is really a viewpoint I've heard many times down here. It's like, what are you guys doing up there? And let's cut to the chase. Regardless of which candidate that we all know are running right now, I would say whichever one wins, you've got it almost a dead 50-50 part. Half the people are going to be upset about it, and unfortunately, in the old days, it used to be they were upset about it. In today's day, it's going to be like a revolution, I think. So that's a problem.
Well, people always laugh off when people talk about a part of American society seceding or a civil war or whatever. But what's going on in Texas is both of those things right now.
Mm-hmm. And history shows that it happens.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
If you look at empires, and the story is always the same, how they start and how they end, the only difference in this empire is our history is happening fast, the beginning, and we're reaching the end quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think about everything nowadays is quick, right? So that's just modern advancement. And, since in pre-industrial times to now, like now everything happens so fast. If you can't, if your phone doesn't do something in 3 seconds, you're frustrated, right? So, I mean, everything moves at a very quick rate.
The world looks at America the same way in the previous century Great Britain was looked at. Mm-hmm. An old conqueror, an old empire, your best days are behind you. Our allies are not as quick to agree with us on things. Mm-hmm. And that's what an ally is. An ally is a biased person. So you're supposed to always be with me. That's what an ally is.
One of the differences right now, though, is most of the time in history when there's the, quote, superpower is on its way down, there's usually something on its way up. And this is an interesting scenario right now, because I wouldn't necessarily say that's the case, because you could quickly jump and say, well, that would be like something like China. China is arguably also on its way down, is having all sorts of challenges and struggles. Mm-hmm. You could have probably a couple of years ago said, well, maybe that would be Russia. I mean, I think we found out through this war that Russia's barely a developing country at this point. I mean, they can't even get a truck to drive without running out of gas. You know what I mean? So the argument then becomes, well, what is the next power? And that's not really defined.
Russia is showing that they're not as significant as we once thought, but this Ukraine-Russia war is showing that there are a lot of people who would like to see the power hierarchy to be shuffled. because normally, now looking at logistically what they can and cannot do, we could have squashed Russia a year ago. But they are being supported by Middle Eastern countries. Yeah, I like that even better. Other countries that would not have been so brazen before. So we don't have that big one to take over as an empire, but we got enough smaller chiefs ready to go to war that can cause us a huge problem. We have actually shown historically that since the Civil War, we have not really won a war. All our wars we've won internally. When we go battle everybody else, we lose. I mean, that's just the reality. You know, you're going to have some people saying that's un-American to say. I'm stating the historical facts.
Yeah, we certainly. Well, yeah. We don't win. I mean, we end up in situations that are either eternally going on and then not really solved, or we just eventually withdraw and get out and go away. But yeah, it's just tough.
And I also look at these things from a checkers perspective, and I look at them in a chess perspective. Everything we've stated so far, I agree with. I believe that those are the facts. But then when I look at it from a chess perspective and how wars are fought and how long it takes logistically to get all your ships, wars start like a year, 2 years before. And we're seeing that build up into the Middle East and toward the Ukraine and Russia. I think
by the way, those are connected.
Absolutely.
For anybody out there that doesn't think that those two things that are going on are not connected, you guys are you're paying too much attention to mainstream media for sure, because there's obviously connection. Because if you think about it, all of the players involved on both of those things are the others, or the loosely connected as factions going on, right? So that's been stewing and brewing for quite some time.
And something you're not going to see on the front page of the news is that there are China warships in that strait or that bay. Sure. And they've been sitting there. And from my understanding, these particular ships are their most capable ones of observation, radar, and things like that. And if you know how war is strategized, and especially the way Asian war is fought, there's a lot of observation before doing. If you know anything about Pearl Harbor, they were observing and here and walking around taking pictures a year in advance.
Sure.
I believe that we're being put into conflicts and they're observing what our military might is.
Yep.
To strategize. So that's another issue for an empire. When you have all of these little mini wars, it gives them basically a rule book and a history of what you got, what you don't have, what your capabilities are, what your strategies are.
Yeah. So it also serves to create chaos, right? Because it's you can only, the old story about wars, there's only so many battlefronts you can fight at one time. So if it's in too many different fronts, you're not very effective in any of them.
And that goes back to my conspiracy. I agree with that. And if a real war jumped off right now, we lose. And the main reason is, first of all, we don't have a draft. So we don't have the numbers. If we implemented the draft, we have created a generations now of pussies.
Yeah.
Nobody's going. People are going to go to Canada. People are going to say they're some things you can't say. Some people are going to.
You'll have the reverse thing going on. You'll have so many people running towards Mexico. It's not even funny.
And I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it. There's a strategy that men use now to make life easier if they are going to jail. And I think they'll use that same strategy to get out of going to war.
Sure.
So that's where my conspiracy comes in. Our troops are crossing the border right now. because we know that we don't have the numbers. we literally don't have the numbers of people to fight a war.
Yep. Well, I mean, to be honest, that's what Russia's doing right now. They're recruiting soldiers from other countries, whether it's from Kazakhstan or from Uzbekistan or whatever. They're offering them something in exchange for being on their team. So it's very similar to the U.S. Hey, you just came in from Venezuela. You want citizenship? Here you go, serve on this aircraft carrier for 6 months or whatever. It's easy to conceive that would occur.
And so basically, you're buying troops. That's every empire has bought troops to keep their empire. The problem for this particular empire is we ain't got no money.
Yeah.
We can be squeezed in so many ways. We are extremely vulnerable. And
I mean, I agree. And I don't like at my point in life right now, I'm like, how does this relate to me? And as much as you want to say that it doesn't, how does it relate to me from a travel perspective? Since, I guess ideally we're a travel podcast here, but it's challenging, like one of my regrets, I think at this point is I kind of wish I set out to do an around the world trip, 5 or 10 years ago. Like right now is a very challenging time to travel internationally.
Yes. Not only is it challenging to travel, I have fears about future travel. Like, I can't remember what it was, but I remember when we invaded Afghanistan, there were some people going around destroying, like, they destroyed this major Buddha. It was the only Buddha outside of Asia, and it was this big, large one, and different statues, and they destroyed this historic zoo that was like hundreds of years old. So if you've got it in your mind, certain things that you want to see, they may not be there because of war.
Right. For sure.
Think about, and I don't know that much about Ukraine, but I do know that one of the most noted things about them was all of the older architecture, beautiful architecture there that you'll never get the chance to see.
No, I'm quite sure a lot of it's bombed. Yep.
And that's what happens with all of these wars. So if people are wondering, how did any of this have anything to do with travel? We're bringing it home.
Yeah.
War affects you, and it probably affects you more than the person who never leaves their country, especially in America.
Which, by the way, when let me define this. When we're sitting here talking about war, well, I mean, in my opinion, kind of war is already going on. War doesn't necessarily have to be a textbook's definition of like, you're looking out to see where people are firing guns at each other. War is fought many different ways nowadays. It's cyber, it's mind, set. It's through social media. It's there's all sorts of ways to wage this. And that's been, in my opinion, it's already happening. It's already going on.
Yeah. Everything you named, and then you have balloons flying over the country. You have hacking of major infrastructure facilities. I don't know why we still have major infrastructure hooked up to computers. Because it's reported that like just China by themselves attacks our infrastructure like several hundred times a day, every day.
Yeah. I believe this. And by the way, we are probably attacking them several hundred times a day too.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm on this team.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So, anyways,
our reactions to infringement, I don't think are appropriate. Like, I don't like, remember the balloons that flew? We had like 2 or 3 balloons that flew across America. I don't like our reaction to it.
No.
And I don't think if we had done that to them, they'd have let it flown all across their country.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's like you said earlier in the conversation, there's partly a game of chess. So as an example, we just got a bunch of our service members that were killed over in the Middle East, and we know who is behind it. Yet our response to it is not directly attacking the people that were behind it, because we don't want, last thing we want to do is attack something inside of Iran. So we're going to attack it inside of Iraq or Syria, even though we know that Iran is behind it. But it's a chess move. If we attack Iran, we escalate the conflict, obviously.
And it has to be a chess move because, okay, let's just be real with it. It's a Muslim country. It's a Muslim region. If we insult them, we've insulted that region, and we don't have the numbers anymore to insult people. We have to
Which, by the way, we've already done. I mean, the reality is, right or wrong, the fact that we have chosen to be on one side of a conflict in the Middle East is what has largely stimulated the people that are in Yemen, that are in Syria, that are in Iraq, that are in Lebanon. Those factions are exactly what you're saying. They're backing their brothers, and so we've already poked the bear by supporting a situation. Now, I'm not suggesting that necessarily that we shouldn't have supported that. It's just a reality of what we've chosen to do. So we're choosing a side. It's just the way it is. And that's a real problem for from a current administration, and which, by the way, any administration that's in power that had to make that choice would be a problem. So the current administration has, I'd argue it's not a very strong one in the first place. From a aggressive standpoint, they're just simply not. It's just I don't know how else to say it. It's a weak. It's chosen not to show a very strong force anywhere.
Well, I'm gonna just say it like this: this administration has put us in a lot of bad situations where somebody's going to have to clean it up and try and make America great again.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure any of that candidate is really running, Phil. Just to back up everybody on the other side here, that also could be a disaster. So, it would be nice to see. I would love to see somebody that was running that was younger than me. I guess that's the best way to describe it. It would be nice to see somebody younger.
Well, didn't they already kick out all the young people?
God, yeah. I mean, it seems like they're making new. Yeah, it seems like you got to be 80 or over.
You know what? Nobody talks about it, but why do they even have these debates and all of this stuff? Because they decide who they want early on. Mm-hmm. Like, Trump is going to win. Why are y'all having these debates? Why are y'all fighting for 2%?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. No. Likewise on the other side.
And then on the other side, you remember what was this, Bernie Sanders? They didn't want him. Right, so they just decided, no, we're going with her.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that I don't go for either side, because I see the semantics. It's all just to make you feel like you got a part, but they don't ever do what you want. They don't do what you want.
Unfortunately, no. And unfortunately, in our system in the States, it comes down to, what amounts to a couple thousand people in about 4 different states that actually decide what happens. The vast majority of Americans in the vast majority of states, 45 of the 50 states, are foregone conclusions. Basically, they don't even matter, right? So that's the way our system works. So now it comes down to a couple thousand people in each of only 5 states, and that's what's going to decide this. So that's the only thing that matters. And if you think about it, that in itself doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's a lot of things that don't make sense, but Well, see, you got me riled up. First podcast of the new season, and we're already on. I mean, I guess we're a victim of this as well.
Yes.
We're going to be talking about this all year long, right? Because it's reality.
My pockets are hurting, bro.
And that's a good point. That's a good point, because at the end of the day, you're going to vote. I'm just going to be the guy that says this, because most of my friends and a lot of people will lie to you and tell you that they're going to support this side or that side. At the end of the day, I think people vote for whoever is going to make their pocket feel better.
I agree. I agree in general. Yes.
I mean,
because there are
I
a
can
lot of
tell
people
you
who
over
get
the
caught up.
last several years, I mean, financially, for me, it's been terrible.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's been terrible. That's what it's been terrible.
Yeah, terrible. Economy's terrible. Let's just, I know you could shoot all sorts of numbers and give me all sorts of stats and all sorts of other crap, but feet on the street will tell you it's crap.
Bruh, I see it in little things like when I grocery shop.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my wife, we had a little joke with her and one of her friends. Her best friend lives in Florida. And they were talking about, I had made my wife breakfast. I made pancakes, and my wife likes me to make pancakes anytime we have Alaga syrup. Alaga syrup is a regional syrup. Mm-hmm. So we have to order it online to get this syrup. And I told her the reason why I hadn't gotten Alaga syrup recently is because for 2 16-ounce bottles, it was $32.99. And we were going back and forth talking about, that's crazy. And then she brought up the number that she thought it cost. And she was like, yeah, Alaga syrup is only $1.99. And I was like, no, it hasn't been $1.99 in years. Mm-hmm. It should be still, a bottle of it is like $7 or $8.
Yeah.
And now they're charging you twice as much for it. But my point is, prices in the last 2 years have jumped up so incredibly that if you're not the person shopping for the groceries, you don't even realize your ideas of cost is just not accurate.
Yeah, not accurate. It doesn't matter what you're talking about.
Milk is like $1.50, $2 more a gallon. Eggs are like $2 more.
Well, and even for people that are homeowners or are paying utility prices, and cost of energy. These are results, by the way, of world policy, right? Not just U.S. policy, but world policy. Obviously, resources like oil and whatnot are a factor of different cartels and coalitions and set prices, and there's politics involved in all of that. But then you've got conflicts. So conflicts create escalation in prices. Ukraine is an obvious one that affects oil, affects food, it affects prices of grain and things that they grow there for food that supply a lot of Africa, as an example. So what has to happen now is Africa has to get their food from somewhere else, thus taking it from a supply from us or somebody else. And then that means the supply and demand. So our prices go up. So it's all interconnected. And you got to realize that. So when I say that the administration currently in place in the U.S. is ineffective, what I mean is it's ineffective for me. And I think I'm speaking for a lot of people out there, even the people that are not necessarily quote on my team or believe maybe some of the same policies or politics that I do. But that doesn't admit, but their price of chicken is still the same price that I'm going to pay for chicken. They don't like it either. So, but that's where it comes from. It's just policies, a lot of it's regulation. Some of it is, it's frustrating because, and like you said, it's a lot of moving around. It's a lot of artificial, policy stuff. Take the border as an example, right? You right, wrong, or indifferent. You could say, the policy. Forget about whether it was right or wrong. When you switched administrations from the prior one to the current one, what happens on the first day of office? The first day of office, they come in and they go, "Let's get rid of this, and this." They just get rid of a bunch of stuff because not on policy, not on whether it's working or not, simply on the fact that I hate this guy. We're going to destroy whatever he did, regardless of whether or not it was right or wrong. And then what you're seeing now 3 years later is that I just heard yesterday or the day before, talking about some of the stuff that they're implementing. I go, well, geez, shit, that was the same crap that they got rid of. Now they're going to bring it back, and spin it some other way. But
it's got to have my name on it.
And and by the way, I'm not suggesting that a new administration gets in there can do the same thing. I mean that is a problem. It is definitely a problem.
Oh, so let's just take one for people listening who maybe aren't following. Let's just take an example. The governor of Massachusetts, or he used to be the governor. I forget his name. The rich guy. He ran for president.
You're talking about Weld. Talk about you're Mitt Romney.
Yeah, exactly. Mitt Romney, basically what we think of as Obamacare, he actually created it. He actually implemented it in Massachusetts and literally had governors from other states visiting him, doing workshops to possibly implement this great success story in other states. Well, when a Democrat just said, well, I'll do it, all of a sudden they hated it. But it got implemented. But do we stop there? No. They tried to fight to get rid of what they had originally wanted. And then they decided, no, but it works. So now we have to rephrase it and not use that name to give it credit. So, and that's just one that most people will know. But like you said, the goal is to say, I'm going to do the opposite of the other, whether it makes sense or not. I hate that.
At the end of the day, regardless of what, quote, team you're on,
I ain't on either.
Nobody is looking out for you.
Right.
You got to realize we're just citizens, right? So they're not looking out for us. That isn't the goal here, and that's the real bottom line.
Once you realize that, I think you'll make better long-term business decisions, better life decisions, and I believe you'll mentally feel better.
Yep. And obviously, the less I strongly encourage people to get out and live their own life and have fun. And do stuff and not get sucked into the drama, right? Because a lot of it's drama. So the less time, I made it a conscious effort. I know we're talking about here on the podcast, but I tend not to pay super attention to the news, or at least I don't pay attention to the news in a way that it is just getting to me. You know what I mean? I'm listening to the news to be an informed person, but I'm not repassing it along on social media. I'm not reposting this. I think we all have friends that are just like, you can go on their Facebook feed and it's just one drama thing after another. It's like, just stay out of that. You're going to have a better life if you don't get sucked into what's going on. Unfortunately, on the other side of that, ultimately it is going to affect you somehow.
It's sucking me in, whether I want to or not. Yeah, I am. Me. I don't have a side. I preach about it's a waste of time to pick a side. So I agree. Because some people say they don't have a side, but they got a side. I really don't have a side because I think it's all BS. Yep. But
I'm about as close to.
But I am forced. I am forced to pay attention and participate on some level now because it's affecting me in too many ways. And And like when you were talking about the news, well, like I try to avoid the headlines, but I pay attention to some things because like I invest in commodities and things like that. And one of the best ways to find a barometer of how to invest on particular commodities is to keep up with shipping rates of containers, just empty containers, not even full of stuff and like that. And we have shipping right now currently in America is at 1970s rates. The amount of shipping containers out there, we don't have any because all the other countries are using them.
Yep.
That's not a good sign.
Not a good sign. No.
The
shipping industry is one of the best indicators, actually.
Right, and that for those not understanding, it is telling you that we are no longer a priority for imports.
Mm-hmm.
That other
think about it this way.
Other economies are rivaling ours, and those shipping containers are going to those places. The other side of it is... Go
back to the old days. Think about it this way, so people understand that. Go back to the old days before money, essentially, back in, go back hundreds and hundreds of 1,000 years ago. It was a barter system, right? And it was a commodity thing. I had, nuts and you had firewood and we trade that, and that's how it works. Mm-hmm. That's the shipping industry, right? That's what containers are all about, is the movement of stuff and trading and shipping, right? So if you're not the king of the jungle and the trade is going on over here and you're the third guy out over here, you're not going to get the best stuff. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to have to pay more for the stuff. Mm-hmm. Because you're not so much of a priority. And that's like what Phil's saying, that's what's occurring.
So that means like if I'm a company who makes stoves for the Overland community or some kind of cooking apparatus for the Overland community, my cost of steel goes up. My cost of nuts and bolts goes up. My cost for paint everything goes up. And that means that when you want to go buy that new piece of gear that you've been saving up for, you finally got the $1,500 for that, whatever it is, and the bumper, and now the bumper's $2,000. You're like, how did it go up $500 in 6 months? Sometimes it's greediness, but what I have learned from being in this industry a while is a lot of these vendors are struggling to survive, and it's mostly because of costs, mm-hmm. material.
And as a business owner, they generally struggle because they can't adapt. They can't shift fast enough, mm-hmm. and they get caught kind of with their pants down. The cost of steel doubles or something. They don't double their price effectively fast enough. Mm-hmm. Right? Because there's pushback, obviously, also from us, mm-hmm. Because you and I might not, we just want the product. Mm-hmm. We're not really thinking about the fact that the steel got shipped to, Sierra Leone instead of to America on a container, and the container stuck over in that port. And that's why we had to get it from somewhere else, and we had to buy it from Germany instead of China, and it cost more. So, that's where this whole thing comes down to it. And it's like, to circle all the way back to the beginning, this is why, superpowers are superpowers, because they control the system. When they start losing control of the system, where they're not strong enough out there, their policies aren't strong enough. You don't realize it. It's not just about war and about who's, winning or losing in Ukraine and Russia. It has also to do with what the cost of chicken is at the grocery store. I mean, it all trickles down like that.
The average person does not have the opportunity anymore to get outdoors and spend free time because they're working 6 days a week. Or if they are working 5 days a week, they're working at least 12 hours. Both the husband and the wife. Sometimes the kids are even contributing now. So it's affecting lifestyles for sure in so many ways.
I hate to say this, but the root, particularly in the States, the root of the problem is that it's not self-reliant. We're not manufacturing, we're not producing the things, and we're not tapping the resources ourselves. We're relying on, in many cases, third parties, other countries, potentially not even friendly other countries to get the things that we need. And that'll obviously starts at the top with energy, and then, natural resources, and it goes, and then food, and it goes right down the thing. And if we're importing more stuff than we're manufacturing or producing in-house, that's where your deficit comes in, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes right back to what you're talking about, the shipping containers and the shipping side of it. And we're not, a lot of our policies are anti-self-reliant.
So we're going to bring it back to travel and overlanding. So shipping containers that you could possibly use to maybe take your vehicle to Africa. From my research, the numbers are so astronomical. Mm. It literally makes sense to buy a vehicle in Africa. Yeah. That's crazy.
Example, I got a quote the other day to ship from Panama to Colombia, which, by the way, for those of you that are geographically challenged, is only, in reality, the shipping is probably 150 miles, around the Darien Gap. Quote for a container, this is not for my truck, but for a regular container, was $8,700. Now, I can tell you, having shipped trucks back and forth from Europe and from Africa and other parts, traditionally the container prices worldwide would range somewhere between $1,500 and $4,000, maybe even $5,000 on a high. But this is transcontinental. We're talking about prices that are double, triple, or quadruple, that are like a couple hundred miles. So that's a problem.
Well, I'm going to have to redo my whole schedule, just being straightforward. And I'm going to be removing New Zealand and one other thing because it's just not feasible for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what I've always preached is flexibility. Like, stuff changes. So, if you were going to set out from England, as an example, and go across, Europe and Asia and go down to the Southeast Asia, I mean, that's not a doable situation right now because of, a Russia, Ukraine essentially blocked the whole path.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it from a financial. I had X amount of trips planned for the next 7 years. Mm-hmm. My money says I got to remove 2 of those trips out of that 7-year window because I can't afford it.
Or do something that, or fill that time with something that is not as expensive.
Well, I ain't gonna sit on my hands, but I mean, my story ain't that sad, but I'm rearranging my life because of wars and economy. That's my point. Yep. Plans that I would like to do, I don't want to change these plans. They're being changed for me. Because now my pockets are different. My safety is different. Everything is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If you had it in your mind that it was going to average you $1,500 for your trips with containers, and you had 7 trips, 7 times the $1,500, and you had figured that out, and now it's $8,500
a piece.
Right? Are you understanding what I'm saying? It's like an exponential jump. It's not like a little it's like a huge jump.
Yep. And that's just one piece of it, right? That's one piece of the equation is the vehicle side of it. You've got you getting there side of it. You've got the cost once you're on the ground. You've got, like you brought up, in many cases, it could be safety concerns in different places as well. So all of these things are factors.
I remember.
Which, by the way, we're not suggesting not to go anywhere.
I remember when I first started investigating overlanding overseas, and I'm talking to people who had been to a particular country that I'm interested in going in. And it used to be everybody, when I'd get to the part about shipping and everything, everybody be like, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That's nothing and blah, blah, blah. Or I'll give you a number. I don't hear that kind of conversation no more at all.
Oh, you're right, because that was never a huge consideration for us either. Having shipped trucks back and forth from Africa and Europe, I've never. It was, there was a cost involved, but it never was something that was prohibitive. And it was, in fact, usually people would be extremely surprised at how that was actually a small part of the cost of doing the entire trip. When people would be like, "Oh my God, that must be really difficult to ship across, the ocean. That must be expensive." And in reality, it was nothing compared to the price of fuel or food for the team, or other things. Even to be honest, even getting like visas and carnets for the vehicle. Some of those fees were more cost prohibitive actually than
your plane ticket.
The shipping. Yeah, the plane ticket. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
So this is probably the dreariest podcast we've ever done, but it was the most exhilarating feeling to get these things off my chest.
Yeah, it's always better to get them off on episode 1, right? So.
and I don't know if I should apologize or not for us going in this direction or not. And I still really edited myself a lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's the reality. And I think that I also not going to promise that we're not going to bring it up a whole mess more times this year, because. Oh,
we're going to at least have this conversation with Iron Horse Overland, which will probably be next week or the week after, because he can definitely give us both of them, him and his wife, the both of them, they're a couple, can give us a really unique perspective coming from the careers that they've had, one in law enforcement, one in medicine. I believe they can give us and they're now in South America. They've just had border issues. So I believe they can really give us a unique perspective on this that we're not even capable of giving. And it'll be very up to date.
And they've been on full-time. Yeah, exactly. Full-time, currently on the road. So, yeah.
And look them up, guys, at Iron Horse Overland. Just how it sounds. Iron Horse Overland. They've been traveling for at least 4 years.
I think so. Yeah. Quite some time. They've been transiting through North America. They've been up to Alaska. They've been. They just did a trip up.
They went to Labrador, I think.
They went to Labrador and Newfoundland. So yeah.
And they're good people.
Yep.
We've eaten their food.
Part of our little group over the last couple of years, certainly, touring through Overland expos and whatnot in the States.
Anything you want to say that we haven't said?
Oof, I don't know. Hold on, let me roll down my bulletproof windows so our fan base out there won't be shooting at us.
I'm really thinking about people who are watching this for the first time, and they're going to be like, either they're going to be like, okay, they're cool, or they're going to be like, no, I don't want to have this kind of conversation all the time. This is not our normal conversation.
No.
But I don't believe in ignoring the elephant in the room.
Right. Yeah, agreed. Didn't know it was going to go this direction today either. So
Well, if you don't have anything else to say, I'm going to wrap it up. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.